Okay, you guys can get out your axial skeleton PowerPoint. We're going to go over the things that you guys can expect to see on the test, as well as a few other little things that you can expect to see on the regular test. I have circled all of the ones I expect you guys to know on here, so it's really important that you learn those. Now, it will not necessarily on your paper be in the same order, okay, as it is on here. So you need to learn the bones. Don't just learn what order all of this goes in, okay? Make sure that you do that. And when you're learning, don't just learn a side. Don't learn the right side and the left side. You just need to learn them as you go. So, you know, I'm talking about the skull, I'm sorry. So anyways, okay, the axial skeleton forms the longitudinal axis of your body. So basically, it's kind of your central portion. It's your skull, okay, facial, cranium, all that, your spinal column or vertebral column, and then bony thorax, which is really like your chest, your rib cage and chest. Okay, it does not even include your clavicle, which is your collarbone, just your ribs and your sternum pretty much. Okay, so those are the three parts of the axial skeleton. And that's what will be on this first quiz, okay? So when you're looking at this full body, it's just this green portion. It's the only thing that is the axial skeleton. That's what we're going to learn this week. A lot of these you guys will already know, so you can really focus on the ones that you don't know. Okay, the skull. It's two sets of bones. We have the cranium, which is the part that actually like holds your brain. I'm actually going to make this a little bit bigger. Okay, that's the part that like holds your brain. Okay, your cranium, and then you have all of your facial bones, where your face is. Makes sense. Okay, so these bones are joined by what's called sutures. Okay, and that's whenever you look at this, you know, whenever you look at the skull, for example, this one, and I would really encourage you guys, pick this thing up and look at it and go through it and pick out what bones are what on here, okay? Anyways, but these squiggly lines are what shows you the sutures, okay? And so those are still joints. We still consider those joints, but they're immovable, okay? They don't move. The only joint that is freely movable is the mandible, which is your lower jawbone. Okay. So, anyways, so please take a look at this whenever you're studying. But that's what they're joined by sutures. Okay, so laterally, we have the human skull, and these colors do not match the colors on my skull here in the classroom, so don't think that we're going by the same color, okay? But the main ones you need to know here, and I want you guys to point these out on your own face as we go through these. So your frontal bone, okay, that's like your forehead, goes down the top of your eyes. That's your frontal bone. Makes sense, it's in the front. And we'll just start on the right-hand side and work our way around. Okay, the sphenoid bone is kind of there where your temple is. Hold on a second. Is there kind of where your temple is? Okay, you actually have several bones that kind of meet up in that area. But the sphenoid bone is actually easier to see in one of these other pictures, and you'll see it. So on here, it's that pinkish color. Okay, the ethmoid bone is kind of square shaped, and we'll be able to see it better too whenever we get to a different look. Lacrimal. Just remember lacrimal because your lacrimal ducts, lacrimal, I think means tears, but your tear ducts are your lacrimal ducts. So kind of in that place where your tears are. Then you have the maxilla, which is your upper jawbone, and then the nasal bone, which is the one that's right out in front. Okay, right out in front. So here's how I'm going to tell you to memorize this, okay? Just so that it doesn't matter what direction it's turned. I would suggest that you learn this. You start with the most superficial here, the nasal bone, and then you just learn your way back. So nasal, maxilla, lacrimal, ethmoid, sphenoid. Yeah. Okay? Nasal, maxilla, lacrimal, ethmoid, sphenoid. If you'll learn those from outside in, okay, you can tell, you'll be able to picture, what direction those goes in. The maxilla is pretty easy because that's your upper jawbone, but it actually goes up, to your nose too. So make sure that you don't forget that one. But whenever you're looking at them, just remember that order, okay? Nasal bone, maxilla, lacrimal, ethmoid, sphenoid. N-M-L-E-S. NMLS. Anyway. So maxilla is something that you definitely need to know. The zygomatic bone, okay, everybody point to your cheekbones. This is the zygomatic bone, okay? That's your cheekbone that sticks out. Zygomaticus, sometimes you'll hear it called. Okay, that's your cheekbone, zygomatic. Maxilla is your upper jaw, like that your upper teeth are on. Mandible is your jawbone, lower jawbone. And you just need to know mandible. Okay, now let's move on. Actually, let's start up here at the top on the left. We don't need to know sutures for this test. That's the coronal suture, which makes sense. Remember, the coronal plane goes this direction. Well, that suture does the same thing. Okay, the parietal bone, that's kind of like the main portion of your head that kind of covers up your brain back here. Everybody point or put your hand on your parietal. Think about your parent whopping you in the head because you did something, I don't know. So, parietal. The temporal bone, okay, is on the side. Temporal bone is on the side, like right above, right around your ears. All that section is your temporal bone, okay? Now, one thing that you do need to know that's part of your temporal bone is your zygomatic process, okay? Processes are just areas of bones that, like, stick out. So a process, like, for example, your pisiform, which is the bone on your wrist, and you can't really see it, is that bone that kind of sticks out below your pinky, but at your wrist on the pinky side. That's a process, okay, or a projection is usually one that sticks out. A process, projection, those are just things that make bones kind of special, or they have like something that sticks out on them. So your zygomatic process, you can actually feel it. Your zygomatic process is like if your cheekbones are up here in the front, your zygomatic process is this one that sticks out back here. That kind of goes back towards your ear. That's the zygomatic process, and that's actually part of your temporal bone. It just sticks out. And you can kind of see it really good on this skull that I have in my room. The zygomatic bone itself is blue, and the zygomatic process connects to it, but it's kind of a goldish color. Okay, then we have the occipital bone. Okay, that bone is actually the one that kind of at the base of your head in the very back. So find that one. That's your occipital bone. This is called, that lower portion of your skull is called the occiput. Okay, now there's the last few formations here, processes that we're going to talk about, are all part of the temporal bone. Okay, so we talked about the zygomatic process. Okay, now we have the external acoustic. The other word that you'll hear this, and I think I use auditory on the test. But anyways, it could be acoustic or auditory. A-U-D-I-T-O-R-Y. If you think about acoustic or auditory means sound. So that's actually the hole. Meatus is typically an opening. Okay, and that is actually the opening in your skull where your ear is. Okay, so that's where the ear is. It's just an opening. External acoustic meatus or external auditory meatus. I think auditory is what I use on the test. Okay, then you have a couple of processes. We have the mastoid process. Okay, and you can actually feel this process. If you put your fingers right behind your earlobe, there's a bone that sticks out kind of right back there. Kind of your skin's kind of thin over the top of it, but it sticks out. That's the mastoid process. Okay, that's your mastoid process. And then we have the styloid process. Styloid means looks like a pin.
Teachers, for this interruption, first we need Jack Miller to come to the office. And then I need the following students to report to the library: Kimberly Alvarez, Logan Alvarez, Montana Anderson, Justin Berry, Damian Battle, Blake Blevins, Saber Blevins, Zach Bryan, David Christensen, Dakota Klein, Corey Cody, Edie Conley, Trey Davis, Evan Dwyer, Imani Gaffney, Brandon Gonzalez, Garrett Hawley, Daniel Hollins, Brittany Lull, Jane McGraw, Carlos Mendez, Darren Moore, Joseph Moore, the older Joseph Moore, Mackenzie Peterson, Devin Pickett, Angel Ramos, Tana Simmons, Cody Smith, Jarrett Stark, Ebony Whitaker, Jacob Zapata, and Emilio Zapata. Thank you.
Okay, so styloid means oid always means it looks like or it's similar to, and stylo is usually pen or some kind of writing utensil. And it does, it looks just like a pen. So styloid process, if you look in this skull, it's kind of a gold color because it's part of the temporal bone, but it looks like it's like a really sharp little pointed bone that comes out the bottom. And you can see that on here. So that's the styloid. It looks like a pen, like a stylus. Mastoid is the one that you can feel right behind your ear. Okay, so that's what you need to know on this one. Okay, here is a superior view of the skull, and you can see the sphenoid bone really a lot more easily in this one. Okay, so you've got the frontal bone up here, then the ethmoid bone is that little kind of square one that's in the center, and in my skull, my colored skull I have up here, it's yellow. The ethmoid bone is yellow on here. Then you have the sphenoid bone. I always remember the sphenoid because it looks like a butterfly to me whenever you look at it from here. And I don't know why that makes me remember it, but I don't know, sphenoid, I don't know why. But anyways, it looks kind of like a butterfly and it has wings. Then you got your temporal bones. What else do we need to know on here? Again, whenever I put these on the quiz, okay, like sphenoid bone, if I point to it in this picture, I'm going to make it the same number that I point to in the other picture. So they'll all be the same numbers. Okay. The parietal bones, the ones at the back, occipital bone is at the bottom. I probably would not ask you occipital bone on this one, or parietal for sure. Okay, and then also notice foramen magnum. Okay, so that is this central area. It's an opening. Okay, it literally means like large opening. So that is where the spinal cord actually leaves the brain and heads down towards, the spine. So that's why that is there. That's called the foramen magnum. Okay, everything else in here, we don't need anything else on there. Okay, this is an inferior view of the skull. So again, there's some that you can see that are much easier to see on here than others. Okay, remember that the maxilla, okay, that is that front jawbone, like your upper jawbone that you can see. Now there's a new one on here that hasn't been on the other pictures, and that is the palatine bone. Okay, the palatine bone, actually you can probably feel it. Your hard, you can kind of feel it. Oh, you can't really, I guess you can feel it, but it's in the roof of your mouth, but it's towards the back of the roof of your mouth. It's still part of the hard palate, the harder part that's the roof, but so it goes back from there. So the maxilla is in front, the palatine bone is right behind. Okay, the zygomatic bone again is that the front of your cheekbones. The temporal bone, that's one that has the zygomatic process on it. So all of this orange here. Okay, the vomer, this is also a new one that's only on this, that you pretty much only see on this picture. Okay, and the vomer is kind of way back in behind the nose and mouth. And if you look on this skull that I have in my room, this colored skull, it's gray. Okay, so you'll see it and it's gray in here. The palatine bone in here is kind of a pale pinkish color, and then the vomer is gray. It's right in the center of that inferior view, okay? So you definitely need that one. Styloid process, again, it's really hard to see on this picture, so I wouldn't ask that one just on this picture for sure. Mastoid process, temporal bone, parietal bone, occipital bone, learned all those. Foramen magnum. Let's see, I think that's it. And then the sphenoid bone, of course, is the wing-shaped one. So, okay, very good. So those are the skull bones. Well, not all of them. Hold on, you can see, oh, you can see the vomer from this one too. So let's look at this one real quick. We'll just go here. Parietals on the side, nasal bone right in the front center. Okay, that's your nasal bone. That says coronal suture. I won't ask for sutures on this test. Sphenoid bone is right behind the eye sockets. So on this one, you can see it's green. Sphenoid bone is kind of all over the place. You can see it from all angles. Okay, but the sphenoid bone is directly behind the eye socket. Ethmoid is really easy, much easier to see from the side than it is from here, but you can kind of see it. On here, the ethmoid bone is yellow on my skull that I've got here in my room. Lacrimal, and then, you know, the nasal, or you got the maxilla and then the nasal in front of that. So zygomatic bone, again, that's the cheekbone. Maxilla, top jaw. Mandible is the bottom jawbone. Frontal, temporal bones on the side. The vomer, again, that's that. If you're looking directly at this guy, it's the gray on mine in my room, that one I have. It's kind of the lower portion of the ethmoid bone. You can kind of see it. So, okay, that's that. Okay, the ear bones. We have 3 small bones in our ears. These are the tiniest bones actually in the whole body, and they have a very important function. And one thing that they do is they actually carry vibrations from our eardrum. Okay, so you can see the malleus on the far right-hand side in here is connected to the eardrum. So it actually picks up vibrations from the eardrum, sends messages to the incus, and then to the stapes, which goes into our cochlea. It actually, these little hairs inside our cochlea vibrate, and those little hairs are all connected to nerves that send messages to our brain so that we can hear sound. It's crazy. But so these bones really have to work and function correctly for us to be able to hear. So I always just remember them in order. If we start at the eardrum, malleus, incus, stapes. Malleus, incus, stapes. Sometimes we hear them called the malleus is like the hammer because it's supposedly shaped like a hammer. I find that questionable, but anyways. And the incus is shaped kind of like an anvil. And they say that an anvil, if you guys don't know what that is, if you remember watching like Wile E. Coyote, there were always anvils on there. It's that heavy thing that said acne on it. And then a stapes is also called the stirrup. And you can see exactly why. Stapes, stirrup. So if you want to start there, you can. But that's the one, and it really does look like a stirrup. I mean, it's shaped like that. So these are all in the middle ear. Sinuses. We're going to talk about sinuses, but you will not see these sinuses on your quiz as far as the practical quiz that just has the pictures on it, but you might see it on a regular test. So sinuses are just hollow parts of the inside of your skull. They're just hollowed out, and a lot of times they have kind of spongy tissue in them, but they're just empty spaces. So a couple things that they do. One is that they lighten up the skull so that it's not so heavy. And then the other thing is they give, like it says, gives resonance and amplification to your voice. So that's why whenever your sinuses get all stopped up and you get really congested, you sound stuffy and it changes your voice because it changes that resonance. So here's the main sinuses that we have. And you can usually, if you have a sinus infection or you're having some sinus troubles, you can usually tap on these and they'll actually will be kind of painful. This is why the doctor, whenever you go in with congestion or whatever, they tap on your cheeks or on your forehead. They're tapping on these sinus areas. So you've got frontal sinus right above your forehead, kind of above your nose. Ethmoid, right around the ethmoid bone. Sphenoid, same idea. And then you've got your maxillary sinuses right here at the front of your cheeks. So it makes sense. These coincide with the bone names that they go with. You can see this picture a little bit better. So again, not on your practical exam. You just need to have an idea about the sinuses for like your chapter test. Okay, the hyoid bone. This is the only bone in our body that doesn't articulate or connect, join, and move with another bone in our body. It's kind of on its own, and you'll see it. You see it on the skeleton. It looks like it's just kind of hanging there. It's just like, looks like it's in the middle of nowhere. And that's because it's connected with other things besides bone. So it actually serves as a movable base for our tongue. So it helps us to swallow and speak. And that's where it is. It's in the neck, kind of underneath. And you don't need to know the different parts of it. You just need to know that that is the hyoid bone. Okay. My bell's about to ring. We'll stop there for this little section of it, and then we will keep going later on.